Good evening, everyone. I am Brad Chester, the youngest and most beautiful man in 40K. And we've got people on work calls in the background, but you can introduce yourselves, gentlemen. Or you
Hey,
could,
I'm
or you could stand there. Either one. The choice is yours. Either way, you're good.
hey everyone, Jeremy Knox here.
Hey, I'm Sean Rice.
That's it. You couldn't just give yourself like a big banging on it. Like I'm Sean, DJ Styles Rice or anything.
Well, yeah, there you go. I'll give the full pitch. Hello, everyone. I'm Sean with Rice, also Dice's Rice on YouTube, and
Here we
I'm
go.
an okay 40K player.
Hold
Medium.
on. We got to clarify that. He said Sean with Rice. He meant I'm Sean Rice from Dice with Rice, not.
Oh yeah, yeah. There
So
you
your
go.
next
What he said.
I just thought he was doing like a cooking channel or something. I was like,
Right? Sean with
Yeah, I wasn't talking about 40K yet.
he's here to make ribs.
direct.
We're going to talk about things and stuff today, man. Crowley, are you psyched?
I'm hyper psyched.
I like it. I'm ready to chat about missions and secondaries. And I'm going to take the opposite side. We basically have a title of simplifying missions and secondaries, and I want more complexity. So we're going to say why I'm probably wrong at the end, but I don't care. I'm going to stick to my guns. I've been wrong before, and I'll be wrong again. Let's dive in. But for a change, let's actually dive into our overriding title.
That's not how we do this. It's because Tom's here. Doesn't mean you get to wreck everything and change it to like being professional.
I just yell at stuff. Woo doggy. Or we could start with problematic win rates. We're halfway through the season, everyone. You know what? We will start with that because to actually tackle our title would really be going against what we stand for. So,
Yeah, there we go. We're leading with examples.
but because it is in secondaries a lot. Right now, we've got 57% season win rate. We're at halfway through Arc of the Covenant, and we've got Dark Angels, Iron Hands, and Gene Stealer Cult all at 57 plus. And I would say those armies are there because they have at least one jacked secondary. I mean, two of the Marines there, Codex Warfare, you stay at Devastator Doctrines, you pretty much get a 15 every single time unless you just get wrecked. And the Gene Stealer secondaries are super strong. They play exactly how you want to play the game as Gene Stealers in the first place. So you're getting probably double 15s on that. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Yeah, so like I like the way that GW has thought about thematically of how armies should play and reward that kind of gameplay. The problem is that what I'm having, if it wasn't for the tabletop app, I wouldn't even know if my opponent like how he's scoring, right? And so I find a lot of those secondaries complicated as well and overpriced. So number one, Gene Stealers with their the one that gives them points for having more bodies in your deployment zone compared to mid board, compared to their deployment zone, and then the different ways that they can score that and match the 15. And I think that the best way to really tackle secondaries like that is to not reward with such high point costs. So the whole Codex Warfare is like what, 2 points for every unit killed or something like that.
Yeah, it's
with no cap. That's nuts.
Well, it's not even just a cap. It's not even a turn cap. You can do that all in like turn 5 and just zoom out and kill everybody. It's crazy.
I kind of disagree though, because Codex Warfare is probably one of, if not the worst designed secondaries in the game right now, because it only rewards a linear, straightforward to play if you're playing in one doctrine. And it very rarely is encouraging you to do unique or like complicated functions. It's just saying play Iron Hands or play a weird version of Dark Hands.
Yeah, but I'm saying if you're playing 25 deciliters and only shooting heavy missiles besides that, you're going to score 15 on that. I mean, it's super easy to fix that one, right? Every other doctrine, assault and tactical, 1 point per. Make it 1 point for Devastator Doctrine. Cool. Some of those are like super easy to fix. Others are super hard to fix. Like Sisters Defend the Shrine, like, do you completely revamp that? Leap of faith, you know what I mean? Things of that nature. And it's not like Sisters are crushing the win rates right now for different reasons, which is they've got a bunch of T3 models that are one wound, and you've got a holy crap amount of indirect coming at you now. But as far as when you're looking at how to fix a secondary, some are super easy, and some, like, you would have to scrap it completely. I think there has to be more 12-point secondaries. If you're going to make a secondary super easy to score, you should cap it at 12. Secondaries that are difficult, that are interactive, that make you go do things, make those secondaries be the 15-point secondaries. I'm playing Sean right now, and I take super easy to achieve secondaries that are almost automatics. I should get 12s. If he says, you have to be on the other side of the board and do all these other things, yes, then he can get a 15, because it's harder to do.
Well, like, for example, and I'm going to plug Sean on this because Sean, I know, played Necrons at Nova, and he played the non-easy button list where he actually played like crazy Novak BS instead of actually running pregame move OBSEC like a true man. He went for like I drink PBA and actually run like Novak all the drones or spiky spinny boys. But I think
spinny boys.
Well, it's a good example of what you're talking about because Necrons by themselves, the data sheets are garbage. Like nobody here will say that there's anything that's overtooled in the Necron Codex as a general one by itself. But their secondaries were on fire to the point where at Nova there was a number of players that were just exceedingly doing well with them. But Sisters at the same time had the same problem where right now the Sisters Dex hasn't had a nerf since then, except for their secondaries, and they're one of the most underperforming at this point.
It's just because of the meta, though. I really think that's the biggest thing. Anytime you have, let's be honest, where Eldar, Sisters, any of the T3 armies with one wounds, one wound, mostly one wound models. Anytime we have a lot of indirect, those armies just suffer horribly because you can't do anything about it, especially when you're talking about indirect at 48 inches. And the board's too small. I can't hide from I literally can't hide from that, especially if you're playing Abandoned Sanctuaries tied to Conviction. You're like, hey, I can just put my models literally in the middle of the board and I can hit you anywhere you go, so like, what you don't really have a play around that. You're just like, I hope my opponent doesn't roll well. That seems like a real bad way to play the game. Hope for the best.
It's a bunch of feels bad, right? You come to the table with your T3 bodies and then oops, they brought all indirect. I guess you don't get to play this game. Or like we're saying with some of those auto win secondaries, you show up and try to play the game and they're like, oh yeah, I just get 15 on that. And you're like, how? Well, I got 5 on turn 1, 5 on turn 2, 5 on turn 3, I'm done. And you're looking at your secondary sheet and you've only got 6 points and you need to jump through, you need to spin 5 plates in your hands and dance and sing a song and suddenly you get 7 points. Like, okay, well, now if I brought a T3 army and I'm doing that, my opponent's like, you have no models and you have to work really hard for your secondaries. And that's no fun.
And it's wild. I'm going to go down to the second tier, which is World Eaters, Demons, Guard, and Ynnari. Which Ynnari is winning at a weird rate. However, Ynnari has one of the oddest things because they have horrific matchups. So if you're playing Ynnari right now, you're like, I'm going to crush you if you're not this. And if you are that, I'm getting rolled. Yeah, then I'm getting rolled. So it's funny because if you didn't have all the indirect, I actually think that Eldar as a whole is in a good spot. But then we can talk 100% on secondaries here. World Eaters and Chaos Demons, man. Reality, crazy good secondary. World Eaters legitimately have 2 secondaries, which you accidentally score 30 points on. Yeah. So, and one of them just can't be stopped. You're just like, hey, I throw a Blood Tithe point away. I get points. Just deal with it. So
yeah, just score 85 points and get table. Seems good, right?
Yeah. The hard part though is that like you want to keep secondaries thematic, but it's like this eternal dilemma of the more, like, let's say we went all back to book secondaries right now, the entire meta just changes, and some factions are just absolutely dead in the water because they can't compete in that group, right? You're looking at like, oh, I don't give up grind, I don't give up assassinate. What do I do? Take no prisoners or assassinate. Do I take grind? Right? Like there's secondaries make or break a lot of books.
100%. And the thing is that we should have, I think that we should probably go back to when we only had, I mean, obviously we're going to get a new edition, but as far as right now, only take one secondary, man, from your book. And I wish we had more and/or more fleshed out. I really want layers. I was saying this before we went live. I'd like to see more secondaries be more like Warp Ritual, where you get very low points for achieving it once. R&D kind of is that way. You know what I mean? Where you get more for basically the longer you're able to do it, the riskier you're able to play. You get more points for that. I like that quite a bit. And ones that, I mean, the thematic, we were talking about how night secondaries, whether you think they're good or not, they are very thematic, which is really cool because a lot of times that's what they're trying for in the game. But all the Codex secondaries should be, I actually like who said it before, Dean, yeah. Make all the faction secondaries cap at 12. I would love that, to be honest with you. I do like KR though. Custodes secondaries are so good. No true Custodes player takes them in the entrance of a fair battle.
That is true.
One of them's really good if you knew you were always going second.
But now I will have to give them credit with how the secondaries does force you more into a thematic army, because I want to take Inflexible Command, I want to take Boots on the Ground, but you have to really build your list to achieve those secondaries, right? One big thing about Boots on the Ground, you need infantry on the board. I mean, I would, in the past, just go, kneel on infantry and just go all tanks, all sentinels. And, then I'm not scoring Boots on the Ground because I don't have enough infantry squads to survive. 30 Casterkin, isn't enough. And so it makes you, spend points on things that you don't want to have to spend points on. Another one is the Eldar secondaries. I know we were talking about this in the pregame show, where you have the Rangers, they, in order to scout the enemy, you have to do behind enemy lines anyway.
It's the same. It's basically the same secondary, which is fine that they have some synergy on it, but it doesn't really diversify. You know what I mean? You have just certain armies get the ability to take things all the time. And there's just a lot of armies that go, my third secondary is, I just throw a dart at the book because they all seem kind of sketch.
I'm sorry. I'm calling Jeremy out. That's bullshit.
What?
There's no world where you justify Inflexible Command being okay and pretending like that's the reason you're taking infantry. You're taking infantry because you need OBSEC, and then when people put OBSEC on an objective, you can double OBSEC it to give them the bird twice, and because you have to be able to...
Whoa, because you also used move to wrap them before you did any of that.
Exactly.
And you got to take Perfectus orders to advance in action.
It's about your thematic bullshit of having your Canadian command squads on the table, sir.
Yeah, I love the fact that you just gave him a Canadian, not Canadian command squads. Those damn French-Canadian command squads. Where's Max Dubois when I need him?
Yeah, that reminds me of the first game I played with Guard, and my opponent asked me, how did those guardsmen do that? And I just said, well, they can do everything. And he's like, what do you mean? Oh, I just gave them one order, and now they can do literally anything. And they're also going to do that again the next turn when this next squad comes out. And that's just, so...
The thing is Inflexible Command's too good, but I would say that Boots on the Ground's a good secondary, man, because you can also, any secondary that you can interact with your opponent, if he takes it, I like that too. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I agree with you on my argument was not Boots. My argument was that Jeremy said that the Flexible Command is thematic, and that's bullshit because he says you can get a 15 on Inflexible just by taking squadron models, sir. So don't try to pretend.
What? My deep strike has to stay in check. It has to stay within 24 of the command squad. Look, I'm going to justify it in 24. Because
such a problem to be.
It is 24. Such a huge problem. I mean, that's 2 points gone when I unleashed the casket bomb. I got to account for that. Okay, let me stop trying to justify. It's broken, right? Like, it is what it is. I'm going to justify.
I said that with a straight face. I need to take you playing poker when we go to LVO, man. You can BS with anybody.
Let's do it.
It's funny because Guard's win rate at the beginning of the year, the season was shit, and now. Oh, damn it. Talking shit to me. Sexy people in here and Brad. Hurtful. Oh. But guards at 53% and going up every week. And I think that they're really finding. Do you think that these crazy Desolator armies are going to put that down at all? Because I don't think that that's that big of a deal. It's just you can't just lean completely into your Cascarins.
So there's two things that are holding guard up right now, and I think it's DA, and I think it's other armies that are specifically tooling, and that's a pool. But there's a good people amount that are doing that. Desolators by themselves don't solve the guard problem. Outside
100%.
of Iron Hands, you can't get to the things that you need to get to. 36 inches plus a 6-inch move is not enough range to get to the Casterkin bomb being in the back. And if you want to trade your Desolators for my freaking for one of my units of mortars,
Bro,
take that trade.
You are underestimating Sergeant Timmy and his 48-inch Vengor launcher. Gonna roll only 6s with all the sergeants, and that guy's gonna go buck wild.
Sounds good until he rolls that one to number of shots.
The same reason I always hated all Necron guns, because they were all random on their shots. Yeah. Like, this gun can go to hell.
And the thing is that in return, that Casterkin bomb picks up 2 units of Desolators on its own. And all guard wants is just to get to the point where it's tank on tank violence. They will take that all day long, every day of the week, right? I think DA is one of the problems because guard actually have to roll average or above in that matchup. As somebody who's played that matchup twice now, it becomes a really interesting circumstance when you're actually having to do 4s and 4s and you don't spike your 5s and 6s to hit. And I mean, it just depends on how many 1s they roll on your mortars. But
can we take a second and tell you how much background envy I have right now? Because Jeremy looks like he's literally fighting like behind the biggest awesome picture of all time. Who did that for you?
Mid-Journey AI did that for me. 10 minutes before the stream, I typed in a command prompt and was like, give me a Dark Angel versus a Space Wolf, Warhammer 40,000, 8K resolution, let's go.
That is so
and
badass.
It produced that. Yeah.
I mean, I'm still got the cow, which I love. But also, Sean was supposed to put his logo behind him and then instead just made it like he's got witness protection behind him.
Yeah, our technical advice from Old Man Brad didn't really go the distance on that one.
Well, you got technical advice from Old Man Brad. So, what were you thinking? I'm happy every time I put this show all the way through without crashing it at one point in time. So let's talk. We've got those 2 levels, and then we've got the meta's still very nice because we've got a lot of people at the 49-51% win rate. We got a shit ton of armies there, which is fantastic. But what armies? Who do you think right now, if you were just going to go, who's being carried? Is anybody being carried Necron style, where Necrons basically had a shit army that was literally the secondaries just went, I got you, dog, and threw him on its back and just took off?
World Eaters?
Yeah.
Because World Eaters are a very one-dimensional army, and I think that, like, they could have a tweak on that, but, like, if you do anything that even remotely hurts them in that secondary, I think that army's going to take a dive bomb in win rate.
Oh, yeah.
I would make one change, which is to make that Warlord trait not pregame, but a command phase, and only make it 6 inches. So it's a 6-inch move for 2 units in your command phase, or like in the beginning of the movement phase for whatever. So that way you could use it on every turn. Because right now that army is literally, do I win to go first? Cool, I'm in a good spot. Do I go second? I'm going to put my shit down your throat, and if you kill it, I lose, and if you don't, I win. And it
not really, because you can screen them, man. If they don't have those secondaries, I don't give a shit if they pre-move their whole army. You know what I mean? Because they wouldn't score enough.
Well, I mean, it depends on the faction they're going into. Not everybody can screen effectively. These Tau boys,
bro, you just take your infiltrators and you put them right up there, baby.
They don't care about infiltrators.
Yeah, they walk right past those guys.
They don't have, well, no, they can't walk past them. They can walk around them. They don't make them stand away, but you can just basically go, infiltrators, stand here and make the charges real far. Make the charge to you real sucky because you're about to get killed.
Yep, that's fair.
Because they don't fly, just Invocatus does. So you still physically can block them out.
Are you getting into advanced tactics with move blocking?
4D brain chess.
Ugh. Oh,
But
Deathwing.
honestly, I don't know that there's a lot of factions that are being held up by secondaries right now. Like outside of World Eaters, I think that the problem is that the like we discussed before, the changes with the last data slate pushed us into a very ranged heavy meta, and ranged heavy metas are very feast or famine.
You
Like
know,
you either have tech to be able to live or you don't, and
here,
nobody has tech to live.
you know what? We'll go into this one. I'll go because Deed threw up the anybody playing tiered secondaries. No, they're not. But who's got the shittiest secondaries right now? Out of a competitive army, who has the worst secondaries?
Tyranid,
I think Tyranid. Yeah.
kill more shit and kill models that the opponent has to have psychic
Sorry,
models.
yes, have sergeants.
Yeah, and then and then kill sergeants. Like it's just they're the worst secondaries. But they've always had shitty secondaries. They were just so strong they could actually take grind and be successful before.
Yeah, nobody cared because you just killed everyone. You're like, I raised 3 banners and now I'm gonna murder face your army.
Custodes are pretty awful.
Save one. Save one today. Well, if he goes second. But
I was to say that the secondary is amazing if you go second. It just sucks if you don't.
That relies upon you have. So if we want to have a game that's well balanced and fun secondaries for everybody, you can't have secondaries balanced around going first or second if you can't choose to go first.
I don't like him in the thing. There's a lot that I don't like at the round. What do you go? Well, expound on that one, Sean.
Well, it's because you want there to be some give and take while you're playing too, right? Like, do I risk it to go first, or do I play safe and try to get less points by going second? I kind of like that as you know, that doesn't have to be a complicated thing. It has to be like an on the nose thing like that. Like you set it out really clearly. If you go first, it's awesome. If you go second, not so awesome. And if you make that decision, that should be your decision to make. I don't think that's bad. I don't think it should be you get a 0 if it works out poorly.
Yeah.
But I also don't think it should be a 15 if it works out.
That's why I think that you should have layered secondaries. Your secondaries should have layers of what you did. You know what I mean? Especially, I like a lot secondaries that have different values for what you achieved. I like graphic gain still. I think that's a really cool secondary. You know, you gotta, if you do multiple things, you get more points. You know what I mean? There's a lot of them that could be cool like that. The problem is that is definitely not simplifying it, because there's a lot of secondaries right now that have 15 bullet points, and you're just like, what? Like, what the what's the Blood Angels one where you kill a character and whatnot, but it's got like 14 different things that you try to achieve, and you're just like, I don't know if I want to take this just because this seems like I got to give my opponent a book to read real quick. Read this short story I wrote about my captain.
Well, I think why I like to encourage my opponents to use that app as well, so that they can follow along with my secondary. So it's like, I have units within 6 inches, check mark, right? Vehicles all within 12, check mark. And that way that there's no, I have to hand you a book. Here's the bullet points of what you need to know. And I think that really would help a lot. And one thing I would like to see too is some of those mission secondaries come back instead of being the bonuses.
Why are we not doing that, man? But the thing is make it so that you have to take them. You know what I mean? That would solve a lot. For me, I think it would solve a lot. But you'd have to make sure that the mission secondaries were good. You know what I mean? Because some of them were just stupid. Remember this is 2 edition ago, but like, remember Overrun? The mission secondary, you're like, yeah, I'm not taking that. That's idiotic. It basically, if you took Overrun, you were just slapping your opponent in the face because you just said, I disrespect you. I'm just going to roll your army. That's the only way you're taking it. But like, making people take mission secondaries and stuff like that, if they have them well written, would take away the fact that, I have 3 good secondaries and you don't. You know what I mean? We get into a game where you have to figure out how you're going to win this game.
Well, that's why I think that I want the base secondaries to be better, and why I have a problem with the secondary disparity to the point where it's at. Because right now it's the same thing as the player place versus GW terrain that we were arguing before, is that picking your secondaries and building your army around your secondaries is a skill. And like everybody that I help with lists and I coach with them on lists, they are always mind blown when I'm like, okay, cool, what secondaries are you taking with this list? And they're like, Well, I don't know. It depends on what my opponent's like. If your plan to go into an event and you want to consistently do well across 8 or 9 rounds, and your plan revolves around what your opponent brings you, you're gonna have a bad time. Right? There's gonna be a matchup where you're gonna run into somebody like myself that gives up 9 points or 10 points on assassination with really hard to kill characters, 11 points after breakpoints on no prisoners, and 6 points on bring it down. And now suddenly you have to killed everything to be able to get a minuscule amount, and my list is designed to just print money the entire time. And you're just like, what do I do?
What do you guys? Corey just put up a good thing on this, basically killing the 100-point system. Also, Dean, yes, Photon secondaries are hot trash, also. But remember when we had primary, secondary, tertiary, and that was just how a game was scored? Every mission was completely different than any other mission.
Was it like hold more, kill more?
Kind of, but it wasn't as simple as that. You know what I mean? It was just, but each one had a different thing that you had to accomplish, and there wasn't like you couldn't just say my army gets to play a different game than your army does, kind of thing. Thoughts on that kind of stuff? I mean, that was how it was for like kind of a long time, to be honest with you.
Do you think that's shoehorning some people in each time they go into a mission, though? Like, you spend all this time and effort setting up game plan, and then you get shoehorned into something completely different at the start of the game.
I'll give you that, but I'll give Anna's kind of a take on it. He goes, love to see secondaries that are chosen from a menu provided by the mission. Basically, so you could have several secondaries provided like by that mission. You know what I mean? Or maybe even you have like a list of secondaries, but they're only viable in certain missions, kind of thing.
I think the perfect system is either whatever Seeds of War calls it or whatever, but the one for the minute or AOS's system where you have a pool of 15 secondaries and everybody has access to 12 plus 3 books, and you pick one per turn, and you have to execute that plan. So you get like this turn I can pick between grind, raising a banner on an objective that I don't control, so I have to either kill more of your stuff, do that, or I have to assassinate a character this turn, right? So that you have set goals that change. You can only do them once per game. Once you set yourself on that path, then it changes each turn so that you can change the initiative or going through, because the mission constantly changes in that regard. But it's not like you're screwed because the plan's constantly changing. And the points then go down significantly because you're not doing 15, 15, 15. But in that regard, it lets you have more tactical control, and you can recover from mistakes easier because you didn't shoehorn yourself in the beginning and then you scored nothing on no prisoners because you just got shot off the table on 2.
What about a couple of things in chat? What do you guys think about a ban for secondaries as you're choosing secondaries, almost like a secondary draft?
I like that, actually.
Because like if basically you had, this is the pool of secondaries we are using, and Jeremy and I are playing, and I'm like, man, his guard is way too good at that, and I just ban that one, and he gets to ban one, and then we basically Madden, fantasy football draft the rest of our secondaries, where each of you can only have one of whatever, so you can't both take behind enemy lines and shit like that.
That would be very interesting to play. I have to.
That would be the exact opposite of our title of simplifying missions and secondaries.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I was about to say that adds at least another 10 minutes to gameplay.
Yeah,
that's what I was
just think about how much you're playing a faction currently, and then someone's like, you're playing a have-not faction, and someone gets up to their table, and you're like, cool, I'm gonna block you from taking your inflexible command, and you're like, haha, I block you from banners, and you're like, well, shit, now I don't have a secondary anymore. Period.
Yeah. Well, the problem is that we did a shit job of keeping everything equal across the board for secondaries right now. Book secondaries are wildly disparate. You know what I mean? It's not even close.
Balance like that though.
Well, that's because we have too many of them. If you could only take one, you know what I mean? Even if you had 3 secondaries, but you only ever were allowed to take one of those secondaries, it wouldn't be as big of a deal. But it's right now, you just go, hey man, my book has 3 awesome secondaries.
What about just randomize them? Roll for your categories and then roll a D3 for, one of the secondaries under that category. So that way, when you get to the board, like, your primary objectives, but you'll never know your secondaries until you get there. So now you can't build into that those secondaries and score those, 15 points. Like, that would be an interesting take too.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is that I played in a tournament where we did like a local deal where you could only use any one secondary. It's a 3-game deal, and you could only use a secondary for each game once. So like if you took behind enemy lines in game 1, you just can't use it the rest of the tournament. And it was kind of, I don't know if that would ever work, but it was pretty fun because you had to really think about, hey man, do I need banners and behind this game, or am I going to need it more, later on, kind of thing?
I just think that the best thing they could do is to take categories like of current faction ones, right? And be like, in this category, the action ones, we're going to take ATR, we're going to take ancient machineries, we're going to take this, like ones that are a little bit difficult to do. And then they're like, these are the 4 book secondaries for the action ones. And now you have choices of things that require you skill to do, right? Like, oh man, ancient machineries would be really good for my list because I've got chaff that I can throw on there, take the objective and do the action and score. Or man, I've got a really good late game list. I could probably knock out ATR. I could save my relic. And then
I'll give it chat went nuts on this. I mean, it is a real thing. Like, you couldn't really do random, Jeremy, and I agree with you on this, Crawley, that I like that better. Think we could diversify it if you'd use more of them. But random secondaries, the problem was like when we used to use the cards and shit like that, when you're like, oh cool, I just chose bring it down and he has 1 rhino, so this is going to be a sucky game because it's still technically something I could achieve,
Right.
But there has to be something. We have to be able to balance it just a little bit because it's a big deal. Because you always see, most of the time, at least I'd say 2/3 of whatever you consider the top armies are just top armies because of their secondaries are significantly better than other people's are.
I think that the way the game has to go at some point is it has to choose whether it wants to be a tactical game or a strategic game. And I feel like the problem that they get all their flack for are the strategic elements and not necessarily, granted, game balance, we get NID, Codex, and everybody's complaining about tactical balance. But like right now, the majority of the complaints are about strategic balance. And almost everything in 10th edition is focused on simplifying list building, simplifying decisions that you have to make before the game, because they're recognizing that the strategic balance of the game is what it's not bad, but players that are newer or players that want to play thematic are put into situations where they're making poor choices to have success at the table. Or they don't invest near enough time into it to the point where we're forcing them into bad situations in the table, right?
True. But I think that we should probably have layered tournaments, to be perfectly honest. Like Sean was talking earlier before we went live about having more combat patrols and things of that nature. And I think that people that wanted less complexity would play in that. You could have like a more simplified secondary and rule set, So you just like, hey, you score 3 points for doing this, you know what I mean? And then you go into an incursion game at 2000, and that's when you get the levels of secondaries where you have to perform 3 things to get the 12 points for the secondary. I also would like anything that's not a really hard thing to do be only 12. All the book secondaries should probably be 12s.
Yeah, my point with that is, it should be a stepping stone. If they're going to present it, this new combat patrol format as like hey, go grab the box, here's your army, here's separate rules, just kind of learn and get involved with the game. Okay, well, it's really easy to say, and here is the stepping stone to get you into playing competitive, where you take the secondary that's maybe just for combat patrol and then add a step to it, and now that's the big game size. So you're constantly getting people in without keeping it way overcomplicated because they've already been playing with it for a little while.
Yeah, Shazo, I've 100% tried to do that before, bringing people from all factions and discussing list building and picking secondaries. The problem is that we're all competitive players here. So like, I'm building a list with secondaries in mind. You know what I mean? And I'm going to do that until they tell me that that's not a thing. I would love to have to build a more versatile army because secondaries changed or more dynamic and stuff like that. But you're not going to do that if you can just optimize your army to do these 3 secondaries and you can take them every single time. You know what I mean? Until you don't, there's no downside to that. You know what I mean? So like, until there is, no one's going to do anything about that, especially if you're trying to win.
Yeah. And Shaso, you can bring up any faction that you want us to discuss. We can go through it right now with our tactical mindset of what we would put in a list and what we're thinking about. But me, Sean, Brad, Jeremy, we all consistently are talking about. Like last night, I called Brad. I'm like, hey, I got a list. First question, he's like, what do you do against this? And I'm like, this. And he's like, what second did you take? This. And we're like, that's our conversation, right? When we do practice games, we don't even go through the first 2 rounds of the game. It's set up. How does this go? Well, then I would do this. Well, then I would do this. And I would do this. Okay, cool. Reset. New information. We go forth, right? It becomes it's an interesting example when you go towards like that about thinking about your list from a boiled down meat and potatoes level instead of the souffle level.
Yeah. I mean, it's a big deal on that. I mean, Jeremy, when's the last time you built an army that could do everything that didn't just focus on specifically what you built it for, like secondaries and stuff?
Yeah, so typically I build my list to, number one, I have 2 secondaries in mind. I know with my old Craft Worlds list, I had ran 3 units of the swooping hogs, right? Because they helped with to the last, and I kept all my units below their unit cost, right? That was building that secondary in. Now with my guard, it's like I think about taking scions because I want to make a decision point between RBD and retrieve band or raise banners, right? And then, of course, I have multiple officers built into my list just so that I can stay in inflexible command range all across the board. So when I build my list, I always think about, what are going to be my main 2 secondaries that I'm going to pick. And then I need to pick 2 to 3 other secondaries that I can audible in as that 3rd secondary. Like I even have an astropath in my list just for warp ritual. Like if I go up against a opposing guard player that can, remain vigilant me out of table quarters, I might not get well on RBD raise banners. They'll challenge me on that. So I might have to go with the warp ritual. So I build in, multiple secondaries into my list and then always have fallback plans based off of what my opponents bring to the table, or even just the mission type, 6 objectives, go and raise banners. And then 5 objectives, I'll go RBD because I know that, raise banners is only going to, give me a 10. So it's been a long time since I had built lists that didn't play towards the mission. I think my days back at the old 7th edition really taught me tough lessons about build secondaries into your list.
Yeah, it's a big deal though. But I think that we're talking about simplifying it, but man, I would like to have it so we just had you didn't know what you're going to get, or you knew that you would have to do multiple things over the course of a tournament. There's just so many lists right now that are like, I'm doing these 3 things. And you're like, anything else? You're like, nope. Okay, cool. And
I'll give you guys a secret sauce.
Secret sauce coming in.
This is something that I've done, and Sean's made fun of me for it. Anytime you're going to an event, like a 5-round event, something or sooner, right? Turn off your missions, go to Staples, get one of those stupid binders that are like just the pages in them. You put your missions in there, and on the sheet, you just draw out your game plan of like which direction you're going to go, which secondaries that you're going to take agnostic of your opponent. I know Sean's going to laugh at me for this. And then you have a plan for every single mission. And then you go through and you look at that plan, and then you throw it out the window and try to roll 7s. But it works because you do all of your pre-planning, right? Like in the military, we learn a thing. Like we do the same thing over and over and over and over again because then we do it by heart, we do it by mental fortitude, we do it by memory. We're no longer having to think about the action that we're doing, right? When I come to a table, like most people can attest, I just start putting my models down. My plan is independent of how my opponent deploys or what they're going through because my plan for turn 1 and turn 2.
I do that so often. Yeah, I'm just going to play.
That's something that every high-level player I've played has done. We basically just look at each other and then start setting up our models. Like it's the weirdest. Like
I do that consistently, where people they want to go one and back and forth. I'm like, I'm just going to put my army out. You can literally put your army out after I'm done. It's not going to change. Like
We might have like one pregame where
Yeah.
you have to roll off to see who
exactly
gets to
your infiltrators, your forward deployers. But yeah, it's not like. Also, we're playing at the end of ninth. It's so lethal. I'm not just gonna put my stuff in front of you. Like, you know where I'm gonna go? Probably these two buildings. That's the only place I can hide. It's not like rocket science on it.
Yeah, the only thing that matters to me is that first piece of terrain deployment. At that point, I know exactly how I'm setting up, and I know how you're setting up. So I'm just going to deploy everything.
Raise your hand
that's something that
if you remember when raiders could actually be deployed on the line and not get blown up on turn one.
What's funny, D goes secret tech advice. Your list right up what you give for all your secondaries. Like when you play WTC, the World Championships, you have to have that, and a lot of tournaments are going to that. When you put in your list, you have to list all of your what you give up for all your secondaries for that. It's actually very helpful. I hate looking at it for the rest of their format, but I love having that at the top because it's super easy to go, oh, you give up X for no prisoners, you give up this for assassinate, you give up whatever, it's really nice to have that because it speeds the game up. And that's another reason why we did this last week when we talked about terrain more, but like anything that speeds the game up as far as your pregame and stuff like that, it's a big deal. I can't tell you I play very few games on TTS, but man, I deploy my army so much on TTS, and I know exactly where I'm going to go at the game. And like Jeremy was talking, I have 2 deployments, and they're based on if you're going to optimize terrain placement. Did I win the roll? Did I lose the roll? There's 2 sets of ways that I'm going to deploy my army based on that. And that's it. KR, never have a plan, be impossible to plan against. Be so random you don't know what you're doing. Your opponent can never plan against you.
There's something that, that's meant as a joke, but there's something to that. You got to have your baseline like you're talking about. You got to have, if they do X, I'm doing Y. And you got to have that locked in. You don't need to think about it. You're just doing it. But then there's also the weird, my opponent brought all armatures, or my opponent brought 300 conscripts. You can't do that anymore. But they throw you these curveballs sometimes, and you need to know your baseline to know how you're supposed to change a little bit.
Yeah, it's funny because like sometimes I've had this happen where you have somebody where you're like, you're not supposed to do this. Like if I'm playing Jeremy right now, and I set all my army up, and the best charge he can get is 11 plus inches. He's just not bothering doing that. And some people are just like, screw it, YOLO swaggins, I'm just bringing the pain. And you're like, you weren't supposed to do that. It doesn't make any sense. Then boxcars. And you're like, God, no.
Nothing is worse than when you've planned out your plan. All you need to do is for them to just not even try that 11-inch charge. And then they collapse your entire flank because the Exalted made the freaking 11.
You're like, no one's going to do this. I'm doing all of it.
It happens against me all the time. I swear, Kyle was nailing every charge. I was like, oh my God, this is impressive. And just collapsed the entire flank. Picked up multiple Limerusses in one turn. I said, oh man, this is what I get.
Dean's got it right on this, everyone. Use something to mark your everything's with. It helps you, but it also helps your opponent. It's just so much easier to have everything down. I'm a huge fan of having stuff. I use cheat sheets still. I've been playing for 20 some years. I mean, of course, my brain doesn't work anymore, so I definitely got to remind myself of things. But it does make it super easy, man. Especially if I haven't played an army in a while. I'll literally write down stuff. I remember, God, I can't even remember what I was playing, but I hadn't played an army that had command phase actions in a while, and I just wrote command phase on my left hand. I was like, oh, command phase abilities.
These right here.
Oh, yeah, those are money.
Because I've been playing guard recently, and I also have enough for my opponents too. But like, they're dry erasable. They're like $5 for 5, and every single army you have all of your tokens that you need. And not only does it help your opponent, it helps you not forget to put out your own buffs.
Maybe you can't read. I love the immediately. I said my brain doesn't work. I get immediately anymore. That implies it ever did. Followed by, don't lie. We all love you, Brad, but you can't read. I'm trying, man. Hooked on Phonics worked almost for Brad.
Yes, Steve, I'm right there with you about marking everything. I went on Etsy. I invested maybe $15 from J15 Designs and got all of my order tokens printed out on little wood chips. I mean, I can pull them up, but they are so perfect for helping me keep track of different orders to issue, which units have what orders. Then when it comes down to like raised banners and retrieve battlefield data, I invested in some customized buttons. So like when I score RBD, my opponent knows because I put a little button token in that quarter. So that one's done. So there's no discrepancy in points.
I love
right?
that stuff. A couple of people that I know have been going to the on their score sheet, drawing, if they take RBD or something, they draw the map and then write it in so that you can see it. You know what I mean? And that's a big thing, everyone. Man, talk to your opponent. We always talk about the conversations because of intent and everything else, but man, making sure that both of you agree on every single scored thing is a big deal. Nothing sucks more than having a great game for 2.5 hours and then the last 5 minutes is you get into an argument because you couldn't remember if a banner was taken down or something else, you know what I mean, or somebody scored something. Ugh, worst.
Super secret tech. On the bottom of the box, write the number of banners that were placed that turn and write the score on each turn. So that way you can keep track of the number of banners that were placed at the end of each turn.
I mean, to be honest, the more stuff you use, be it aids, tokens, things to mark everything, just have more conversations with your opponent. You can't do enough of that. You know what I mean? People ask, like, what do you use? Use everything. Anything that helps you or could stop you from even potentially having any argument, use that. Always. Doesn't even matter.
Another thing that's helped me too that I've recently adopted my last 2 RTTs is that I have a box of empty bases. So like I have like, some 25s, some 28s, some 32s, 60s in there. So that when it goes to, movement, like can my guy actually fit there? So I don't have to pick up the model because we all know that we're not very accurate putting our models back on the table. So when I move that 12 inches, can my guy actually fit there? No, then I move him back and then now he's really 11.5 inches or 12.5 inches away. So I like to, start placing down bases to, to have that whole conversation with my opponent. Like, if I get here with this movement, this is where he's going to be. This is going to give me, a 6.5, 7-inch charge, or I'm able to get into rapid fire range. And that goes into, play with your opponent. I think, with this play to intent type of world, we need to have as many aids as possible to help us along.
100%. So much aids on this. I do want to jump into a real quick. One of the chats was, how do you shake off getting blown off the table round one and immediately go into the next game?
Go to the bar.
Yeah. No, seriously, but like if you have a bad turn, I say this all the time to people. It's not even just me. Like if I'm playing, Jeremy and I are playing, and he's got his guard. I made a couple deployment errors, and all of a sudden he gets a few too many lines of sight on me. He rolls really well, I really bad. You got to take a second to walk that off. Go get a drink, go to the bathroom, whatever. But like, don't give up on that. Too many people just give up. It's a dice game, man. Like on turn 3 or 4, you might get super hot. You might not always win those games. You might not even win most of those games when you get blasted right away and you get a bad turn. But like, you learn more from those games how grinding out points works for you, though. Give yourself a chance, to score, to do the best that you can do, even in shit situations. I just try to figure out, man, I just got rocked. Well, what can I do? You know what I mean? Like, how can I score the maximum points right now in this bad situation? And you'll win some of them. You'll probably not win a lot of them, but give yourself an opportunity. If anything else, you learn from it, though. You know what I mean? You should always go from every game and learn something. You know what I mean? I don't care if it's just about your own mentality. You know what I mean? How can I shake off being tilted? Because you can't get tilted, especially early on. That's why it's so important to have these conversations. Mark your stuff, for you use all your aids. But if you get smashed, you gotta let that flow, man. Be a goldfish. I'm stealing my Ted Lasso stuff. You gotta just shake that off, bro. It's a really big thing though, because if you let one game keep you tilted, you're going to play like shit the next game because you're still thinking about what happened that last game, and all of a sudden you have a bad tournament because you weren't able to shake that off.
Can I tell about my most recent experience with this?
Hell yeah.
And so this is like one of, Knox's life lessons here, right? Because it happens to the best of us, right? And so I was playing Kyle. He's DOG as well. We all know Kyle and we love Kyle. And, he did really well at Mighty Meeple and we fought on the, top table. And so everything was just going wrong for me. I'm talking about like abysmal dice rolls. Everybody knows my dice rolls are, legendarily bad. But this one was like in the improbable category. And so I felt myself getting bent out of shape, getting, literally hot, like upset, ready to just, throw all my dice in the trash and put them in the microwave, teach them all lessons, right? And so, Kyle, he was like, let's take a break, go outside and talk, just take a second away from the game. And I was like, it makes total sense. Let's step away for a minute. Cause I was getting blown off the mat by these demons, right? It looked like it was going to be like 100-18. And so after, stepped outside, cooled down for a second, took 5 minutes, came back in, I was starting to get my points back. Kyle ultimately won the game, but, I put 62 points on the board because I was able to step away, get my thoughts together, come back in, and it's like, okay, it doesn't seem as bad as it really is, right? Like there's ways to make plays here. Things are going to turn. Don't get too tilted. Just calm down. Once you calm down and you really start thinking through it, you really have a path to victory. And, I appreciate, Kyle just like snapping me out of that mode before I really got there. But, it happens to the best of us. It happened to me recently. And, I had to share that story because that's right on cue.
But it's big though, because you can also ruin your own time. You know what I mean? And that's another thing you have to walk away from is just ask yourself, in the end, we're all playing with toy soldiers. I'll give you my whole, again, the same thing I say all the time. In the end, imagine yourself having to explain why you're so mad to somebody that doesn't play 40K. So yeah, I was playing with my toys with an adult. Here's why I'm mad. They're like, man, don't ever talk to me again. Seriously, like, hey, but the thing is, it sucks. You know what I mean? But the thing is that I take pride in the fact that like I will try my hardest to get out of a dumpster fire situation. You know what I mean? So like, even not winning that game, you still came back and scored a ton of points. You know what I mean? That is like, I did the best I could do with that. And that's how I think, as usual with any Brad response, I always make all of the short stories long, but that is how you deal with getting smashed right away.
I have a fun anecdote, Brad, that you might appreciate.
Hit me.
So it was at the tail end of Drukari Madness, and I was playing against the legendary Mark Perry. And I did never played against, this was still when they were in their 8th edition, both 8th edition Emperor's Children before. And I did not realize when you have 3 Dreadclaws, the amount of damage that you can do. So I put all of my Raiders on the line because I wanted to rush straight at him, right? I wanted to go straight into him. He killed all 6 of my Raiders on turn 1.
That's bold. That's a bold move, Cotton.
Yeah. And in that circumstance, I took a step back and I was like, you know what? I'm going to go buy us both a margarita real quick, roll it next door. And I came back and I just went, the ants will now scatter to the 9s in every single direction because witches are stupid. And I actually managed to pull that game out by 2 points just by flanking in every single direction, knowing how I score points and just throwing things at his important things. Like, hey, these 10 witches, you should kill them. This succubus really needs to die. You should kill it. Meanwhile, my witches are like going to his backfield objective, being like, I'm going to score 4 points for taking your home objective. Shame if that was to belong to me now. But losing all of your raiders on turn 1 is a very demoralizing moment. I need to take a step back and see what I can do here moment.
It is funny on that. I have to give real quick. I'm supposed to make sure that I talk about the Bedlam in the Berg major this weekend coming up. Dom's running that in Pittsburgh. So shout out to Dom, Pittsburgh Mojo happening. And I'm going to tell you that literally I almost just choked reading it. Thanks, Zoob. He gave us props to the episode. Goes, pristine episode, A++, would fap again. So that's what I see notified on my screen.
Can Can I also give a plug? I know
100%.
Dean's in the chat right now. We have his Mayhem Gaming GT going on in Mebane, North Carolina. So all DOG, TBB, locals come on out. I think he has a handful of tickets left. I think they're pulling in maybe 114 out of 120 right now. So yeah, he just dropped the name in the chat. So definitely get on over there. There's going to be a bunch of sharks over there. I'm going. Kyle's going to be there. Mike Walsh is going to be there. He's last year's champion. He got a pretty dope chain axe out of it. And I do owe him a decision, and maybe you guys can help me. He's having some indecision with which army he should take to this event.
Ooh, hit us. We got the council. We got the council together. Let's do this.
Yes. So he's talking.
We'll vote for things that you're not even suggesting.
So what he had sent me was a GSC list. One of them is the Myriad Cult, which is like 80 Neos and 30 Jackals. One is Rusted Claw with 5 tanks. And then of course, some meta Marines over here. He's been smashing with his Space Wolves lately. They've been 8-0 in testing. I mean, I couldn't even get boots on the ground scored efficiently against this guy. He put me on like single digits with that secondary with those guys. And then he has Iron Hands, Dark Angels, of course, and then he also has Guard. But he doesn't want to play me in the mirror match with Guard. So
what's the terrain?
We're going player placed, and Dean has put a lot of time and effort in his terrain setup. So, solid terrain boards, beautiful terrain. And yeah.
If he's been playing him enough GSC, the GSC, the not tankless, not tank GSC.
No tank.
Yeah. Player placed GSC is just brutal. But you have to have reps into it because it's not a forgiving army. It's an amazing army, but you make a couple. Yeah.
Flamer brick and all the goodies.
Yeah. I mean, that army's just nuts, though. You know what I mean? Because the flamers dropping down 3 inches away from you is gross. It's just that army can do some shenanigans, and it just scores well, like we were talking earlier. It's secondaries, and it probably has the best counter primary game in the game in all of 40K right now. GSC gives more zeros out than any other army in the game for primary.
Also, remember, we know they're getting data slated because GW said that. And they've had a really rough 9th edition. So he should really take them out and enjoy them while they're still in there.
100%.
They're going away.
Yeah. Because that's just another army that is amazing right now. But again, a few small nerfs could just make that unplayable. GSC's a very hard army to manage, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? Just because you take a few things away and it goes from top army to trash tier. So,
and those Jackals, those bikes, they're super durable. Like, oddly, they're super durable.
Don't get me started. Oh my gosh. My first game, anecdote time. My first game into the newer GSC, like Nick Rose type list, I had my good friend Pedro playing me, and I have never sworn as much in all of my games as I did that one game. As I put my guard army into a Jackal squad, killed 3 of them, and then all 3 of them came back.
oh.
You know how frustrating it is for you as the guard player to put your army into Jackals and you only kill 3, and then they come back.
I did that at WTC against Eric. Every single turn he got 3 back. So I got double quad wolf and another bike every single turn. I was like, I'm gonna kill some stuff. I want to go to the chat real quick before we get out because we're about done. Corey goes, is anybody working on an epic conversion army project during the soft breakdown between now and 10th? And it's nice right now. Also, everyone, buy up huge lots of models. People sell their stuff during edition changes. It's crazy. Buy all their stuff. But I want to go to KR's question, which is Lion, A or nay based on the rules? He's 320. He's kind of a badass. I don't know if he's buff enough. He does have more of Vol type rerolls with rerolling an aura of reroll 1 to hit and 1 to wound. And the dude doesn't fuck around. Like, you get hit by the lion, you're probably going away. But the problem is also
He's a monster.
He's a monster. he met his
Good way.
he met his nemesis, a wall. So
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, those 6-inch heroics make me feel real good. But with no wound cap and no 3-up invuln, which I wasn't expecting him to have a 3-up invuln, but like he needed a wound cap or a 3-up invuln to be playable in the current meta.
One or the other. It's just, because you can just piece him out.
The Kasrkin sniper is like, yo, here's my trash shot. Oh, it's a shame that you just took 6 wounds. My bad.
Here you go.
I'll just arbitrarily throw this one shot at the lion every turn. Eventually, you're just gonna die. That's a shame.
Well, you can get 7 mortals on him with the sniper rifle, so all you gotta do is just fail 2 armor saves. That's GG.
Yeah. The problem, I don't know why they keep making him monsters, to be honest with you, because that is hard, man, to move that guy around. So, and you're talking about him moving up. I mean, I guess he could move up with Terminators, but like, do you need a 320-point dude hanging out with your giant Terminator squad?
Yes.
He's gonna force walk into some Cadian shock troops. I guarantee you. And then 30 Caster can have something to say about it.
They kill him on just mortals.
What are you doing 30 Kasrkin? That's only a 10.
By the way, why does this stupid save thing have a cap of only 3 mortals? How many 6s are you going to roll for your saves in the first place? Did that really need to be capped? Like, what playtest game that they played did one of the guys just make 36 up saves and just kill the other dude's army? They're like, we got to cap that, guys. That's too busted.
Brad, I have a quick side real quick because there was a question from the chat that you missed.
Hit me.
So, Sean, Jeremy, the Archbishop of the Bay, has asked you, Leo or Zaku 2. And I know you're not going to try to say Leo on this podcast because you are a Zaku man.
It's the Leo, man. Come on.
Oh, why are you here? We need to get this
Come
man.
on.
Why did I invite you?
Just look at that beautiful suit. Come on.
Oh, man. 6-inch heroics, by the way, is a badass thing.
6 heroic is really good on terms.
All right. We are about to dance out, everyone. Does anybody have anything else they want to juice up? Sean, you can try one more time to get your channel right.
Yeah, so for everyone out there who would like to see more simplified secondaries and army lists and faction guides, I've started a channel that's Dice with Rice, and I'm going to be going over as many factions as I can to go over how to actually simplify down the tactical side of the game. So you're going to have to know your own rules, but that shouldn't be a big ask if you're already in here and watching this. So, player place terrain, GW terrain, we're going to show you how to deploy, what secondaries to take in a nutshell, and give you, as we talked about earlier, that kind of baseline understanding of the army and what you'd like to do on each mission.
Love it. Jeremy, what you got for me? You gave you the promo. You got anything else for me, Vega Dog?
Yeah, so, support DOG. We're a growing community. Please share our link and, upvote our post and hit the like button. We're a newer show, still trying to fight the demons of the YouTube search engine. So any kind of engagement helps. We greatly appreciate it.
Well, I love it. And KR, everybody should paint the lion, by the way. That might be one of the coolest models that's came out in forever. And with that being said, I have the last laugh, so we are out.